I have two cats that were absolutely uninterested in sitting near or on the desk until I sat down to record. And now they are inseparable. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie, and today I'm doing another Dollar Tree book review. Today we are going over, the sticker is covering it. We're going over You Let Me In by Camilla Bruce. We are 2 for 2 on Dollar Tree books. This is 2 books in a row that I gave a very high rating. I enjoyed it so much, and I have just a positive review for it. The last one was All My Colors by David Quantick. I had the day off Wednesday, and I had picked up this book. I think I read about 10, maybe 15 pages late last night on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday I was like, you know what, I have the day off. This is a pretty short read. It's only 255 pages, so I decided to just see if I could finish it in a day, and I did. It made me feel a little bit good about myself that I was able to just finish a book in one day, but also I think it just goes to show how fun and interesting this book was that I was able to, stick to it in one day, The first thing I want to talk about this book is that it is misrepresented on the marketing side. I got this from Dollar Tree, so it's not like shelved with a certain genre. It's just kind of thrown on a shelf with like 5 other books, right? So the current trend with murder mystery thriller novels is this, right? The blackish blue cover with like yellow font or a certain other color font. They look incredibly similar. This is like a huge trend. Now I had this at home sitting on my reading table, so I was like, this is a diet this, right? Okay, let's see, this is the Dollar Tree version of this, right? I pick it up, and all that it talks about is like a murder and a mystery and like a missing person, being compared to Gillian Flynn, who is a murder mystery author. She wrote Gone Girl. If you go to the mystery thriller section, this is this is the trend you'll see. I thought it was a murder mystery book. It is not a murder mystery book. It is horror and psychological drama, psychological horror, psychological thriller, something like that. It's also a very quick and easy read. It's not too deep. It's just an uncomfortable horror book, but it's like meant to make you uncomfortable. So while you're uncomfortable, you're like, yes, thank you for making me uncomfortable, because this is so creepy and scary. I was scared. I was a little bit. It's not anything too graphic, and it's not anything too like horrific. Like I didn't have nightmares about it, but it's just that like psychologically, something's wrong, something's up, so you're just kind of grossed out by it. That kind of horror. I think the marketing aspect of this book, with like the background and the blurbs on the back, it needs to show that it's more horror and fantasy, because that's what it is. It's also got this psychological element to it. We'll get into it. So if you see this book out in the wild and you're thinking it's going to be another mystery thriller, it's not. It's horror. It's horror with dark fairy magic stuff, like that kind of stuff, okay? So the actual story of this book is that there is an author named Cassandra Tipp who has gone missing. She has a lot of skeletons in her closet. Her husband was killed and the case was never fully closed, and then her brother and father were part of this murder-suicide scandal, there's a lot of death in Cassandra's life, and then she suddenly goes missing, and people are like, what happened to this author? And so according to her will and testament, her niece and nephew are her sole heirs, and so she writes them instructions to go to her house and read the manuscript she has left, to find the password to her inheritance, basically. So the book is set up in a kind of a meta way, because you've got the newspaper clippings of what happened. Oh, Cassandra is missing. Everyone's speculating on this. Oh, this brings up the old tragedies that she was a part of as well. Then it has the instructions from her will and testament telling her niece and nephew to go to her house, and then you turn the page and it's written by Cassandra Tipp, and it's her writing out a manuscript as if she is talking to her niece and nephew and what they would be saying, and then telling the story of her life to her niece and nephew. So at some point she's using second person, but she's also, it's a conversation between her and her niece and nephew, but it's all written down. But then you also remember the parts where it's her niece and nephew are like walking into her house and talking to each other, it's her theorizing what they would be saying, not actually what they're saying. So it's a little meta and a little jumbled at the beginning, because it's like, oh, this isn't actually what the characters are saying, because they're not real characters. It's what she would want the characters to be saying, and it's weird. I will say that was a little, the more you think about it, the weirder it gets, but the actual story is very interesting. So she starts with her life story, and she talks about this creepy entity that has been with her entire life. She's like never known a moment without him, and he's this weird fairy guy, but not like sparkle and glitter fairies, like deep in the forest, mossy, scary fairies, right? And he has chosen her to be his life force, and so he like feeds off of her, like he actually bites her and like sucks her blood kind of in order to get her life force. And because of that, he looks very human, while some of the other fairies don't look very human. She also explains that fairies aren't like a magical creature, they are the dead come back to life in like a certain way. And not all of the dead come back to life, but some of the dead do, and things like that. And then they become these weird, not human, not really alive things, and then they feed off of animals and life forces and things like that. And she just happens to be this one guy, and he's this like 1,000-year-old weird entity feeding off of a child, and it's gross, and she describes it as like an intimate relationship, and then it becomes like an intimate relationship when she's older, and you're like, oh, that's so creepy and so gross and disgusting when she talks about it. But due to this entity haunting her life and also giving her like weird gifts and threatening to do other things with young girls that are her friends or like her sister, she acts out in front of others in order to like protect others, kind of. So she like harms other girls so that the entity doesn't want them, and then she like accepts all of his gifts because she's afraid that if she doesn't, he's gonna take her sister instead of her and things like that. And so because of her acting out and having all these weird dead things in her room, her mother is like very concerned about her and talking about like, something's wrong with you. And so there's all this friction growing up because her mother just doesn't understand, can't see the things that she's seeing, right? Then the like psychological twist that happens, is not really a twist, but it's like a wrench that's thrown into the thing, is Cassandra is very much like, this is what happened. This is my life story. This is real. I have a relationship with this fairy man. I know all these fairy people. I've been there. I know their magic, right? But she starts seeing a therapist or a psychologist, and he is like, no, this is trauma-induced psychosis. You were abused by your father, and you're just dreaming up these fairies. Like, your brain needed to protect itself, so it made up these fairy stories to have like a fictional bad guy take you away from like the real bad guy in your life. I definitely recommend this book if you are into any of that dark fae, creepy aspect of things. Although I do say, look at the content warnings. I would say the big content warnings are like child abuse and inappropriate relationships with a minor, and then just talking about suicide and trauma and the brain, mental illness, things that happen with that. So those are the big content warning. So if you're somebody who's kind of sensitive to that sort of stuff, please be wary when reading this book. But other than that, I do think that this book is very well written. Just the right amount of like flowery language that it complemented what was going on, because you're talking about like dark, creepy forests and magic in the woods. You're not going to have like very clinical prose. You're gonna have like flowery talking about like the atmosphere, the very atmospheric writing that just very much complemented the story rather than taking away from it. I think that's the balance people have to have when they're writing with like purple prose, is the writing style taking away from the story? Because if the story does not go hand in hand with the writing style, it's just gonna have a very jarring disconnect with that. And I think this balances it very well, where the flowery language really works with what is going on in the story. So I really like that part of it. I liked the creep factor. I don't think you get a very satisfying end. It is an interesting end. It makes you think about things, because it's like, oh, was this just trauma-induced psychosis, or was this not? Like, it very much seems like this was really what happened to her. Like, she really had these fairy people haunting her. And so it's like, it's kind of left open-ended where you can be like, I don't know if this is, but also I don't know if it, you know, there's not a concrete answer, which I love. I would say the only thing detracting from this story is that at the end of almost every chapter, Cassandra would talk directly to the readers who are theorized to be her niece and nephew, and she'd be like, let us move on to like the murder aspect. Let me tell you what happened to your uncle. Let me tell you what, you know, what really happened with my father, things like that. And it's like, I didn't need you to speak directly to me to be like, let's move on. Like, you could just cut to the next chapter. I think we could cut all of those parts. But other than that, the writing style was very cohesive and just interesting. And the story was very interesting. I think even though it was left vague, I think the reason it felt like, oh, yes, of course the fairy stuff is real, is because they didn't actually tell us anything about the father being bad. There weren't that many clues. I think 1 or 2 clues at one point. The fairy following her is called Pepperman because he smells like pepper. And so at one point she describes her father as having a peppery cologne. And so I think that's like the only clue you get to where it's like, oh, maybe her father was abusive and like this is just trauma-induced psychosis. But other than that, it really just seems like fae shit was happening, and she was unfortunately part of this fae abduction and things like that. And so I think if the author did want to leave this more of an open-ended, like it could be true fairy shit and it could be, you know, trauma-induced psychosis, she needed to give more clues of her father being the perpetrator of this abuse in order for me to believe that the fae shit was made up. Because right now I'm like, nah, nah, girl, it seems like it seems like she was just abducted by fairies. Like, why would I believe anything different, you know? Apparently this is a debut novel, so I'm really excited to see what other work she has. If she comes out with anything else, I'll be on the lookout for it. It was just such a good read. It was so interesting. I don't want to say it was simple, because simple has, like, a bad connotation, but it was, like, digestible. Even the creepy parts, there were some parts where I had to, like, set it down and be like, do I want to continue this? Am I in the right mindset for this? And I would just pick it back up after, like, a 10-minute TikTok break, and I'd be like, okay, I can get through this, right? Highly recommend this book if you're into like creepy dark fae shit. Definitely check the trigger warnings before reading it. I think be on the lookout for Camilla Bruce's other works, because this one was great. I hope to see how she develops as an author. Alrighty, that was my review and I guess recommendation of You Let Me In by Camilla Bruce. Did I think this was worth $1.25? Absolutely I did. I'm so glad I found this, because I definitely wouldn't have found that in the sea of trendy blue ombre and yellow text books that are the mystery thriller section. So I'm so glad I found this in Dollar Tree and I was able to pick it up and enjoy it, and hopefully now one of you will pick it up and enjoy it as well. Have you read You Let Me In by Camilla Bruce? If you have, what did you think about it? You can comment down below and give this video a like and subscribe. Thank you, and I guess goodbye. Why am I so itchy?